Welcome to Qt Widgets and more. In this episode, we'll talk about the tool pre-commit, which is a tool for setting up Git pre-commit hooks. Maybe I should rename this YouTube channel from Qt Widgets and more to Am I the Last One to Know? Because at least in KDAP, everybody's been talking about pre-commit for a while, but I thought, hey, I would finally get my project up and running with pre-commit, and well, maybe you haven't got up to that yet, so I'll show you how easy it is and how useful it is. But first, why would I want to do that, and what is pre-commit? Well, pre-commit is a tool that can get commit hooks from a lot of different repositories, and they have already been set up, so all you need to do is to write a small YAML file, and in that file you will configure what tools should be run as pre-commits to your setup. And if you don't know what a pre-commit is at all, well, then there's a link right here to one of the episodes that I wrote a long time ago by now on my Git setup. So why would I want to switch in the first place? I have, 10 different Git commit hooks that I run, and only one or two of these are like standard hooks that you could find in that repository. Well, for two reasons. First of all, I would like to get more hooks. The more the merrier. The more tests that I can do on my software before I commit it, the better. And second, and that was really the pain point, Git, or the Clang format tool from version to version changes slightly. So it would change how it would indent, something. And if somebody was using version 6 and somebody version 7 or whatever version numbers we are with at Clang format by now, they would have a fight, basically. So one would run Clang format on a file and it would indent it one way, and then somebody else would run it on the same file but with a different version of Clang format and would re-indent it, or the CI would complain because the CI wasn't in the same version. With pre-commit, you basically specify the version of Clang format as part of that setup. So that would hopefully once and for all solve that problem. And if you don't know what Clang format is, here is another URL to a Qt Widgets and more where I discuss Clang format. And better embrace yourself. It was one of the very first episodes we recorded. Okay, enough talk. Let's see it in action. And I promise you, the setup is super easy. I was amazed how easy it was and how well it integrated with the existing hooks that I had. Because my greatest concern, and the reason why I am 1 year after everybody else in getting up to speed with this, was that I had a bunch of hooks that I wasn't sure whether they would work out with it. Okay, step number 0. Check that you do not have any changes in your repository, because Git the pre-commit framework will likely change files on your disk, and that is somewhat annoying if it's changing some files and you didn't like those change and you had other changes. Actually, what I did was to just take a complete fresh check out of my Git repository and was using that. Okay. So now we can run pre-commit. I could spell it, pre-commit, and it would tell me, oh, something is wrong. I didn't find the .precommit config YAML file. And that is the configuration file for it. But also, if we just go to the web page here, and the link is like here, there's here even a link so you can click on it. This is the step 0. That's just the installation of pre-commit itself. I assume that you did that. I must have done that a long time ago. I likely just apt-get installed it. But once you have that, then you're ready to run. And as it says in here, if you have no other, then run this. Well, no. Well, okay. Somewhere it says you should just run this command here. And what it does is that it gives me a pre-commit pre-commit-config.yaml file. I'm not going to say that again. And what you get here is the revision 3.2, and here are the hooks that it will run. So out of the box now, it can run these hooks. And what will happen is that whenever I commit something, it will run these 4 hooks that I have in there, and it will run them, but only on the files committed. Not so fast, Jesper. Just because you got that YAML file in your directory is not going to make Git hooks all of a sudden use it, is it? Obviously not. Let me show you what a fresh checkout looks like for me. So first of all, I want people to set up the right hooks, and I want them to set up other things. So I have this git setup script here, and it's a very simple bash script, and I'll put it in the note below, or I'll modify it and then put that in the notes below. But what it'll tell me is that, hey, I'm going to nuke your old hooks directory. Okay, next I'll copy over those git hooks, and I will set up a commit template, very useful. And you have client format, that's cool, great. And finally, let me add an alias for you. And would you like that? Yes. Okay, over and out. And now my git setup hooks looks like this. Oh, obviously not. Looks like this. I have my commit message. That was the one that I copied over there. That's not what I expected. That's the script that set up the commit message. What I have here is the pre-commit. That's the interesting thing. So my pre-commit hook looks like this. It's basically just runs through my pre-commit.d and then runs each of the scripts in there, and my pre-commit.d looks like this. And if you look at that directory, you'll notice there's a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with general purpose software development. There is a hook for checking that I didn't add any fix me's in the code, that I have icons set up correctly, that I'm using the KDAP view or table view rather than QTable view, and so on and so on. So very specific for this project here. And that was what I was concerned about. How would I integrate that? But let's go back now to the directory here, and all I need to do is to run pre-commit install, and now it will install the hooks for me. And if I go back into my .git hooks, you will see that pre-commit now is actually running with the .precommit config YAML file here. And see if I can spot that here. Well, maybe it's happening inside it. What it also does is that it runs the pre-commit .legacy here. And lo and behold, that looks very much like the pre-commit we had before. So what pre-commit, the tool, now does is that it runs its own system, and then at the end, at the beginning, I think it will run this pre-commit legacy, which will then run all my hooks that I had in my .precommit.d directory. Now everything is set up. I could start using, well, I would of course modify my setup script, and I would commit the .precommit hook, but apart from that, everything will be fine. So let's just go out here and see what we have here. We have a st, that's a shortcut for status. We have this new file, so let's just add that .precommit hook and check that in. And CI is just a shortcut for commit. And now you can see here, it's running all of my tools here. It failed to find the script, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so obviously I needed to set up my submodules, which I'll do when you are going for a break. When you book services from KDAP, we'll obviously do what you need to get done. We'll help you with your software, we'll help you with your integration, but we'll also offer you to get up to speed with the best practices when it comes to CI or Git usages. So follow this link here to learn more about our services. A peculiar looking guy, that Jesper, in color, huh? I'm not used to seeing myself in color. Anyway, While he was talking, I ran my git submodule or git fix submodule, I think right here, to an episode on git submodules if you're curious about that. Okay, we set it up now, and one thing that we really want to ensure is that all the files in our system, in our project, apply or works with the new setup so that you don't get commits in the future where it's changing line endings, for example. You want one commit where all those things are fixed. And for that, there is a command that you'd need to run called pre-commit run -- all files. And what that basically does is it runs the pre-commit scripts on all the files, not just as it would do when you commit something on the change files, but all the files. And that is why step 0 that you hopefully did if you're following along was to make sure that you had a fresh checkout, because if you look at my git status now, you can see there's quite a few files that has been changed. Among those, a bunch of SVG files, and I don't want to get my SVG files changed. I'm sure that they are fine as they are. And also, if you go up here, you'll see some files in third party. And that's definitely files that I do not want to change. So git reset -- hard, and careful if you have changes to the .precommit config down YAML, whatever it's called, file, that you do not nuke those away. So if you have that up in an editor, well, make sure that you save it once you run the reset -- hard. Let's try, just so that we can get a feeling for it, to make sure that it will not go and change the SVG files. I don't know what I did wrong when I did my git commit previously. When you watch this episode, you would likely have noticed that because I actually did manage to nuke my pre-commit file, but fortunately I hadn't modified it at all, so that's not the end of the world. What I need to do now is to go into this one here and add a line that looks like this. Exclude types, and do that for the end of file fixer 2. Exclude types. It's a list. It's a Python list of PDF and SVG, and what it basically tells it that the trailing white space hook should not do these file extensions, and the end of file fixer should not do these. And let's just go over here and run my pre-commit run - all again. And hopefully this time git status will show us that it did not modify these files. It's still modified down in the third party, so let's just try and do that. Git reset -- hard. And fortunately over here now I can, let me just go and press save. Save. Okay. Okay, I would expect that it would have said to me, the file had vanished, do you want to save? But maybe I did something peculiar. Anyway, let's also exclude that default or third-party directory. That goes, and yes, now I understood why. I never added this file in the setup here, so therefore it would not nuke it with a git reset. So anyway, changing or excluding it goes like this. Add exclude : third party. And this here is a Python regular expression, and in the documentation over here, somewhere down there, they tell us about the regular expression, what you can do if they become unwildly big. You can do some magic in YAML, which I honestly didn't understand, but hey, that's cool. I don't need to understand everything, but you can get it into a multi-line. But let's just validate that it actually works now. So pre-commit -- run all files and git status. Hopefully we did not have any modification to third-party files anymore. Jesper, you are just showing us some syntax we hardly understand, and you are using keys we hardly have no idea what should be. How did you get to know all of that stuff? Well, that was easy. So first of all, I could go to this URL up here where it tells me about the hooks. So we can do that. Well, I already did. And here are all the hooks that are available for this particular pre-commit hooks Git directory. There are many, many more. Some of them applies for C++, some of them applies for Python. I'm sure there's stuff for Cobalt. No, likely not. But that is where I'll see what available hooks there is in the setup. And then if I want to know, go back here again and see repo : this is just a Git repository that the pre-commit tool is checking out for me when it wants to run the hooks. So I can go to this directory here and check it out. And one of the things that I can do in here is git log, and I can see if I scan down here that we are now at 450. So if I would try to use one of the recently added hooks and I had it saying 320, then it would just say, I don't know about that. So let's better get to this particular tag here. Or I guess I could write head to get to the head tag to get the greatest and latest. But of course, if any of the hooks change the semantic value, then I would all of a sudden be in trouble, just as I were with the Clang format and its versioning that I'm trying to solve in the first place. So I checked it out here, and I can now look at one of those files. That's one of the hooks that was in this pre-commit hooks subdirectory. And here I can see the hooks, and I can see down there that if I run to main, that there are a number of arguments to my parser here. There is one called maxkb. And if I go over here and I undo, there it is. Then that's one of those things that you need to understand about the tools. For a given hook here, I can specify args, and this is the marks args that is that will be added. I'm running my. I need to go back into my directory here now. KWR, and I need to run pre-commit 1, and it will run my hooks here on all the files and check for added large files. That passed. That's peculiar with max kilobyte of 1. I definitely have larger files than that. Maybe it will only check if I actually run. There was an option for that. But another thing that I would like to show you here, if we just comment this out and I say max what the 1, and I run again, pre-commit run, unexpected keys present. So it does check for those keys. That's at least a good thing. I think that I found situations where it wasn't, but that's the downside of this YAML format, that it can be somewhat tricky to get it right. And now finally to what I came for, namely Clang format. To get that in here, all I need to add is something that looks like this, and maybe I should just indent it more properly so that it works for me in my brain here. Oh, whoa. Okay, now I'm breaking everything. There we are. And here are the hooks. And this hook has, well, this repository that I have up here has one hook. And now you ask yourself, but which version of Clang format doesn't say version somewhere? Well, that actually comes with a revision. So if we go to this one here and check that out, git clone this thingy and go into mirrors, and we do a git log, we'll notice that the tag here is, there is a tag for each and every single Clang format. So if I wanted, for some reason, I wanted it to be 1603, then I would just be specifying that version. And with that in place, let's just make sure that we save it. And let's change something in main.cpp so we can actually, and I should be back in my AWR here, and change something in main.cpp so we can actually see it working. Let's just add a bit of space here. There we are. And then git add main.cpp and git commit some changes here. And hopefully all icons have fallback set. That's one of my existing hooks that works there. And it will come and complain about git clang format minus diff. That's interesting. I need a break. Yeah. So I had two problems here. First of all, I still had my own legacy clang format test that failed. And usually it fails by just returning a negative number or a non-zero return code from script. But that made it print out some really nifty error message. I'll have to investigate a bit further in how I adapt the script. Check the comments below. I'll add a note there once I find out. As I said, I literally set this up yesterday, so I just wanted to give you an idea of what the setup looked like. And second, I had the problem here in my script that the indentation was wrong. So it looked like, oh, come on, like this. And it obviously didn't like that. So I changed it to look like this, and it liked that very much. So it must be using the levels for, well, obviously it's using the level because this one is not at top level as this one, but somehow I messed that up. And now you can see in my script that it ran, and there's no files to check, so it skipped this one. But my hook here for clang format failed, so that's the actual hook that was now working. And here the journey starts. Now you will have to go and figure out which of these checks that you would actually like. As I said, more checks means better software, and means that those people doing the review of your commits are not sitting there and saying, well, you should get the indentation right here, or you should be careful with this and that. And let me just look at, so I'm back at the pre-commit hooks page here, and just take a few that I actually added myself right away. Check case conflict. Ooh, that's a good one. If you're on Linux, then case matters. On Windows, it doesn't. So if you have two files that are called exactly the same, but with a case difference, then you would actually get a warning from an error from this one when you try to commit it on Linux, which will save you on Windows. Check executable have shebangs. So you might have added some executable but forgot to add the shebang, and there's a check shebang scripts are executables. I've actually had a few commits where I forgot to make them executable, and somehow that hit other people. And there is, as you can see, quite a few different debug statements. Well, that's for Python, so well, that's not going to help you. Again, I'll likely create my own repository for those few that I have. And I have, for example, one that I like very much is the one that will complain if I have a fix me committed, because that makes it possible for me to always, when I do some larger changes, I can just write fix me in my code, and I know that they are mine. And when I try to commit, then it will complain, hey, you have fix me here, you should not have that. Let me know in the comments below which hooks that you found and liked. And as you can see, just look at the scroll bar over here. There is a lot of those. Many of those has absolutely nothing to do with C++, but there might be some hidden gems in there that you found. And please let me know, because then we can all be in a better place. Until next time, have a great time.